But if you guys could all move, you guys don't have to sit right next to each other, but move to the front 3 rows so you guys are close and personal. That'd be great. Yeah, boy. Get over here. It's not like you're married or anything. Move. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, buddy. Hello, Hoffmans. All right. So we're going to open in a quick word of prayer, and then we're going to get started. Dear Father, I thank you for each and every person here today. I know that everybody that's supposed to be here is here, and I thank you for delivering them safely, and I pray that you will speak through me and that everybody will get home safely and hopefully have had something laid on their heart. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All righty. So this is the Wednesday Word, and I will be doing some scripture reading, a couple of verses, but this is more of a testimony of a day that happened a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to tell you guys about that because that's what the Lord laid on my heart is a testimony of that day and the day to follow, and He taught me a lot that I kind of quickly forgot today and then remembered it again because that's how we are as humans. We like to learn a lesson and then forget it really fast, and this is kind of constantly in an endless cycle of learning. But we're going to try to learn this lesson and hold it to our hearts closely because it really will help. So, the title is To Be Positive and or Optimistic. A lot of you guys may not know this. My mom and Olivia know this, but I'm not super great being positive at the house. I can be positive at work. Everything be going wrong. And then people be like, what is wrong with you? Everything's going wrong. I'm like, it's funny, and I'm getting paid by the hour, so it doesn't matter. But I am better at keeping a positive attitude at work than I am at home. And so a lot of times when I teach a lesson, I teach it on something that I really need to teach myself. And so we're going to be talking about being positive, optimistic, and cheery on a day-to-day basis because there's no reason not to be. So my last lesson did not go as planned, and I only looked at the bad of it. As you guys remember, some of you guys, which in your guys' opinion, which is very, what is the word, uplifting and builds my conscience, is when everybody's like, yeah, it was the best lesson ever. And I'm sitting here like, no. And I stuttered through the whole thing and kind of like cut it off halfway through because I just couldn't stand it anymore. But I only looked at the bad, but no longer. I'm going to look at the positive side of it because that is what we're supposed to do as Christians, and I'm going to learn from it. And by learning from it, I'm doing my lesson a little bit different today to hopefully make it to where I'm not stuttering through the whole thing. But I'm going to read you guys a verse, and then we're going to have the personal testimony of the day. That was the bad day. Capital letters. It's the title, Bad Day. So, we're going to be reading 1 Thessalonians 5, 16 through 18. Hey, Jeremy. Glad that you're here. And so, Jathan, if you get that pulled up, I'm going to read it. So it says, rejoice always, pray constantly, give thanks in everything, for this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ. Do not stifle the Spirit, don't despise prophecies, but test all things. Hold on to what is good and stay away from every kind of evil. Now, I read all of those verses, but the first half of those verses, about 16 through 19, are the ones I'm really going to hone in on. And that is, it says, rejoice always, and everything give thanks, and don't stifle the Spirit. And we're going to say that today, because the Spirit has many fruits, and it has many things that lives inside of you and helps you live on a day-to-day basis. We're going to say, don't stifle the spirit of joy. Always have that little flame of joy and bouncing and bebopping around in you. And I was going to mention something earlier because you missed it right earlier. I talked about how I'm better at being positive at work than I am at home. And I was going to say that when I worked at Eubanks, Jeremy liked to mention in the morning lesson, he'd be like, yeah, we got to stay more positive, guys. Like, we're going to learn how to have a joyous spirit, except for Braden. He's got that down. I mean, we're good now. Braden, you're okay. Don't be any more happy. You're going to start annoying people. But it really did build my confidence because sometimes I really didn't feel like I was being joyful. But Jeremy constantly reminded me that I was remaining joyful. And the more you say something, the more it becomes reality. And that can be a good and a bad thing. But the bad day. So, at work, I work on engines. And work, because that's what you do at work. And I have to fix things and work on an engine. I maintain them. I change the oil filters. I change the spark plugs. I do all those things. And you check these things called kills. And these kills are put in place to be a safety mechanism to where if something goes wrong on the engine, a minor thing, the kill will kill the engine, not like blow it up, just like shut it off, and it will stop it from running so it can do no further damage to it. And so when you're starting up, the preventative maintenance is what we call it. You go through and you check all the kills, make sure they're all working. Because if one isn't working and that specific thing goes bad, let's say it's a vibrator box, if the engine starts shaking, it'll shut it down so the engine won't tear itself apart. And if that vibrator box isn't working and you didn't check it, the engine blows apart, you're in trouble. So I go to check through all these things. I just inherited this route, and 2 vibrator boxes were bad. Like, well, dang. But I'll fix it. I like fixing things, and that's fine. But throughout the day, little tiny things happened that started kind of filling up my angry meter. And I'm going to draw you guys a little angry-ometer. And yeah, that's what it is. I made that up on the spot. Aren't you proud? So we have this little angry-ometer. I got a good little lumpy reservoir there. I'm going to fix that. Gosh. It was like really ugly. Okay. I'm going to get down here and try a little bit better this time. Mason, you might have to come up here and draw a perfect circle. All right, that's not good, but I'll try to be positive. That's a circle. It's a perfect circle, and I'm joyful of it. So those 2 boxes were broken. And it wasn't that irritating because I like fixing things, but I was kind of irritated because I kind of get more irritated at people than I do at actual inanimate objects. I'm like, man, if that guy just fixed that box, I wouldn't have to do that right now because I got PMs I got to do today. And so, but whatever, I finished my PM and I go to replace the box. They had 2 separate problems on these boxes. One box, its code wouldn't clear, and one box wouldn't throw a code. So it was 2 separate problems, but when I took apart the boxes, it looked like the boxes were bad. So I changed both boxes. And I get done with the PM, which takes a couple of hours, and throughout the PM, I drop a bunch of tools in the oil. Now, when you're working at this job, normally after you're done with the PM, you wash the engine. You power wash it, you get all the oil out, so that way like tons of bugs don't go in there and die, and animals don't die in it, and then it smells like butt, and then you're dropping tools in it, and it's unpleasant because then you pick it up and you got cloth gloves, and then it gets in your cloth gloves, and then you wipe your hands, or you pick out your phone and your phone's covered in it. And so I dropped tools in, and that kind of irritated me during the PM, but not that much. I like to pretend like I have a pretty long temper. I didn't want to lose it. Okay, it's about 10 o'clock. So I'm very slightly agitated, but not that much. I wasn't throwing things like, oh, well, I'll get it clean. I'm going to look at the positive. I'm going to get this thing clean, clean it up. It's going to be nice. And I fix those boxes. I go to fire the engine up, and I hit the box, one box, and it won't throw a code. Well, I just replaced that box. Why is it not throwing a code? Because I've just fixed it. I checked all the wires. Everything should be fine. Well, it turns out while slipping and sliding around on the oil, I hit a wire that was damaged already and broke it. So then I had to shut the unit down just to get the wire done. And I had to change the wire, and this wire's laying in the nasty oil sludge, so I got to pull it out, and then I got to run a nice shiny wire through the nasty oil sludge, and I was getting irritated again. And I had to drive like 6 miles out of my way just to get this wire. So, like once again, I got a little bit more agitated. Stuff's starting to build up, and that is not what I'm supposed to be doing, but the day goes on. I fixed the wire. It's working now. I get it all done up. I'm so proud. Hit the one box, it works. Hits the next box, won't throw a code. I was grumpy at that point. So it was lunchtime, and I'm going to eat lunch because I get even more grumpy if I don't eat lunch. I mean, seriously, like all these things that are building up. Reese is shaking his head back there because he knows if Brayden goes without lunch, this is a bad day. So, because he wrote me, he's like, dude, chill, it's just lunch. I'm like, lunch is everything. But it is, and when you're working, you need lunch. But if I didn't eat lunch, that thing would have jumped to there in like 3 seconds. So I sat down and I ate lunch. I calmed down. That's still there. It doesn't ever go away. It's still building. And I'm going to explain why this is not good here in a moment. But I get out and I start trying to tackle this thing. And so I take it apart. I'm looking in the panel. I'm slipping. I'm sliding in the oil. I drop a few more tools in the oil. I'm still trying to figure out why this thing is. Because this is like one of the most simple repairs you can make on this engine. Like, it's literally the screen displays the code. There's a screen. The wire to the box. That's it. There's like 3 parts, and I can't make this thing work. I'm like, that's just not why. Why is it not working? And so then I'm sitting there, I'm just kind of staring at it, and this 2-hour PM is now dragged on for almost 4, because I'm skipping a lot of details, but I just sit there and I diagnose it, and I would get out my multimeter, and I'd test it, and I'm getting more and more agitated. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to swallow my pride, and I'm going to call the lead mechanic, because I don't know why this thing isn't working. I fixed everything. I've wired it 9 different ways. You can wire it normally open, normally closed, all the different ways that you could wire it, and it would not work. So I call the guy, and I drop more tools in my oil, and I get my phone smudged all over, and I'm calling the guy, talking to him, kind of agitated. I'm like, dude, this isn't working. And he's on the phone. Well, he's over there working on his own stuff, and he's sitting here thinking to himself, because that's how it is, this is simple. He's just like, it's simple. What's wrong? I'm like, I don't know. I know it's simple. That's why I'm so agitated right now, trying to get this thing fixed. And so then I have the problem with, I'm a people pleaser. Not necessarily, but I do like to make people proud. I don't care if I hurt someone's feelings, but I do want to make them proud. So I will just tell it how it is, but I do want to make sure that I'm doing a good job for you. And so then I'm feeling like I'm letting this guy down, because he trained me for like 3 months. And that's like 2 or 3 days into being by myself on my own route, and I can't figure out the most simple kill in all of the realms. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so he's like, well, it has to be an enunciator problem. Enunciator is just the screen that displays the code. It's like, it has to be programmed wrong, because previously on the route, and this is where more agitation builds, the guy before me did not ever check the kills. So that thing could not have been working for a possibility of 9 or 10 months. It could have never been programmed right. That engine could have been put in there, and then it never worked, but it never got checked. And so I go into the settings of the enunciator. But he's like, all right, so this is what you do. You hit the setup button, and you hold it down for 5 seconds, and it's going to have you do a code. So I'm like, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's just like set up, and then it just goes right into the settings. But it doesn't give me an option to do a code. This guy's been doing this for 8 years and hasn't had this problem, but I try to do it, and it doesn't even let me punch in the code. And so you can look at the settings, but it won't let you adjust them at all. And he doesn't know why. He's on the phone. He can't see what's going on. He's like, dude, you're not doing it right. I'm like, there's not any way to mess up holding a button down for 5 seconds. It's not that hard. I mean, it's like, you trained me for 3 months. I promise I ain't that dumb. He's like, this is where I'm starting to slip. I'm like, I'm not dumb. I promise you. And he's like, I know you're not dumb, because I trained you, all right, but you're doing it wrong. I'm not. I swear, I'm not trying so hard. But long story short, I finally get it. After I tried to get into the computer for 5 times, it let me change the code. And so I changed the code, and then the engine won't even crank, okay? Engine just stops. And that code apparently shuts down the fuel and the spark and everything. And then I had to get back in there, and it wouldn't let me punch in the code to change it back. And then I had to do it for like 5 times. So then I finally got it to start. I changed the wiring, and I got it to work. And by that point, I've blown my top. I'm done. I'm very upset. I've been there for 6 hours on a very simple kill. I had other things I needed to do. I didn't even hardly get to wash the thing properly. And I was angry. I was done. Throwing in the towel, and the very next day it goes down, but we'll talk about the next day here in a second. I'm irritated, and there's a problem with this design. So, James 1:2 says this, consider it great joy, my brothers, whenever you experience various trials. There's a good old Bible slap for you, like read that the day of, or the next day. I don't remember when I read it, but God taught me a lesson there, and I'm supposed to be considering it a joy that I'm facing all these trials. And the reason I said that this is wrong is because this is an artificially man-made capsule for angry. The angry human is all inside, but it's not supposed to be there. I'm not supposed to be an angry human. I'm supposed to be a joyful human. I'm supposed to be a light for Christ. And I built this, and I wasn't supposed to. It's going against God's design. You see, God's design, because I clogged it all up, you see, there is the opening where stuff can pour and angriness can get in there, and it goes in. But I built this lumpy bottom here, and that's not what it's supposed to be. It is supposed to be a straight vessel because everybody gets angry. To say you've never gotten angry in your life is like impossible, okay? You have experienced some form of light agitation, irritation, something. But God's design is to give all of your problems to Him. When you are facing trials and tribulations, you're supposed to experience it all joy. And so God has made a great design, and it is where you experience trials and it becomes angry, but then this is not supposed to have a bottom. People like to build, like me, like to build an ugly little lumpy bottom on the bottom, and then we get like to hold all of our anger and like it's some kind of treasure. You're not supposed to keep your anger. It's like holding trash, really nasty, oily, dead poo trash. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to give that trash to God, and then God then turns that into joy. And He turns that into wisdom. And He shows you how to learn through your trials and tribulations. He shows you how to be a beacon of light to other people. So when you guys are going through your day and you're getting angry, you might want to think about busting out that lumpy bottom and letting God's actual design work and let the anger flow through you and give it to God and let Him turn it into joy. Could you imagine if we had a factory we could put trash in and gold would come out? I mean, that'd be great. I might invent that one day. I don't know. But that is supposed to be God's design. And the very next day, my day turns around. So, the very next day, we go back to that same engine, okay? But I have a different attitude because God was speaking to me. He's like, listen, trials and tribulations, consider all joy. It's going to be a good day. I'm like, all right, it's going to be a good day. I got lunch. I'm going to eat my lunch, and I'm going to work on this engine. And apparently the engine had gone down like 2 or 3 times that night, and I was upset at it. But then the lead mechanic comes, Steven. He comes over there to help me. And we spend 2 hours on this unit, on the same box. And this guy with 8 years of experience was as confused as I was because it was actually a fluke, once-in-a-lifetime problem. It turns out that the brand new box that I had diagnosed properly, I did. And I thought about how I did it right, so that way I could be positive. And I also thought about how maybe I'm not as dumb as I thought I was that day if the super smart mechanic is also struggling with this. And it is that the box from the factory, the one that we put on there, is broken. So you put a brand new part and it doesn't fix it, then you're confused. That's how mechanicking works. You see a problem, you're like, this is the problem. You put the new part on, and then the same problem is there. You're like, well, something else must be broken. You have a lot of trust in that new part. And I shouldn't have trusted that new part because it turns out if you took off the cover, there was a majorly bent piece of metal in the very back, a little teeny tiny thing, that was actually prohibiting it from throwing the code properly. And so Stephen got in there, and he bent it all, and it got good. And I got to finish washing the unit, and the day was good. But the thing is that my lesson was not complete until I got to talk to a guy named Derek, and he has been a kind of light in my life these past couple of weeks. And I got to talk on the phone with him because he's my pumper. When I fix an engine, I call up the pumper. I'm like, hey, your well's ready to go back online. He's like, all right, well, we just got talking. And I was in a better mood that day rather than the day before where I was in a bad mood and I just wanted to go home, go to sleep, because that's what I do when I'm angry. I just want to go to bed. I actually thought about witnessing to this guy and ask him about the Lord. I'm like, so yeah, or I brought up church. That's usually what I do. I bring up church and I see what the person thinks, and then we start a conversation. Well, it turns out that this guy actually is a pretty new Christian, and that just days before he told me that he had been praying that God would send him somebody in his life that would talk to him about the Word and about Jesus. And that was extremely humbling. Because all this, he's like, and then 2 days later, bam, you're here. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. And we get to talking, and he's talking about how the trials that he's had in his life, but how he's maintained a positive attitude. I'm like, man, this is like entirely too much to be coincidental. I literally decided like hours ago, like in the morning, that I'm going to do a lesson on positivity. And then this guy's talking about how Christ has changed his life, and that he wants to be joyful no matter the trials and tribulations that he had. He's going to decide to do joy. This guy hasn't been reading the Bible a whole lot, and he's already got more stuff lined out than I had the previous day. And I've been a Christian for 10 years. And this guy told me, And it's kind of a silly thing, but he told me, he's like, yeah, I asked him how his day was going. He's like, yeah. He said, I had a hard time with work and stuff. He's like, but it was a good day. I'm like, why was it a good day, Derek? And he says, well, he's like, I had a lot of work. I was busy. He's like, but I got a new lunchbox today. He said, so it's a good day. I'm like, wow. And that lunchbox and that comment really changed my attitude about what was going on at work and getting agitated at things. And over the course of these past couple weeks, I've had multiple times where I've got agitated, but I've remembered to stay positive and to remember that I love snow and to remember I like cold, despite how cold it is right now. And I think about that guy was like, my whole day was kind of rough, but I got a new lunchbox and it was a good day. And so when you guys go throughout your day-to-day life, think about that no matter how bad your day is going and no matter how much is going on, no matter how many times you stub your toe, no matter how many times you drop your tools in oil, remember that there's always a reason to smile, there's always a reason to choose joy, and that there's always a reason to have a good day and a positive attitude, because that's what we are supposed to be with Christ. And sometimes you'll find out that it will annoy the people around you that you smile a lot, but then you find out that later it actually helps them during their day. They may be annoyed in the moment, and then you find out when you talk to them later that it actually helps their day. They're like, yeah, we need you to be positive because we're all negative and we need you to continue to have a positive attitude. And that is kind of a heavy burden to bear sometimes when everybody else is having a bad day and you're having a bad day, but you're not allowed to pout. You're supposed to be the happy one. It is a hard burden to carry, but it is the right one. And it is the right way to choose to live your life, is to live your life constantly with joy and happiness. And so that's my lesson. It's short and sweet and goofy, but that's kind of how my lessons are. And so I hope you guys enjoyed, and we're going to do a quick song. It's kind of to cement the lesson in, also invitation time if you guys want to either give your lives to Christ if you're not saved here, which I'm pretty sure everybody here already is, or also just to commit to be maybe more positive during your day-to-day basis. And so that's all I got.